Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome to the Books That Make You show. I'm Desiree Duffy, your host, and today we're talking about books that make you enter the world of a former Hollywood horror actor as he learns that maybe his wife's death years ago may not have been what it seemed. It just might have been murder. Are you ready to be introduced to an emotion-packed thriller? Meet Lee Lindauer. He's an award-winning author whose transition from being having a successful career in structural engineering to crafting emotion-packed thrillers has fascinated readers worldwide. He is known for his deep dives into the human psyche. Lindauer's novels explore the intricacies of fear, redemption, and the enduring human spirit. His latest novel, The Salvation of Henry Maxwell, captivates readers with thrilling explorations of human transformation and discovery that's rooted in the shadows of old Hollywood, one of my favorite locations. Lee, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here with you today, Desiree.
I've always had a fascination with old Hollywood, being somebody who lives or lived in Southern California. I'm not sure where I live anymore. I've always loved the mystique of, the 40s and 50s, even going back farther. And as a kid, I grew up watching Vincent Price and just loving some of those old Universal horror films. So can you talk a little bit about your transition to being an author first? You've been an engineer and you write these very thrilling stories. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to novel writing and plot development from your experience?
Well, I think a lot of it comes from, like you, I had a fascination with the old time movies, more so than the newer ones, and especially the 60s era when I was a teenager and a kid. I would just love going down to the matinees on Saturday, and usually a double feature, and seeing some of those Roger Corman movies that he would put out with Vincent Price and Boris Karloff and some of those guys, Follow the House of Usher and The Pit and the Pendulum, those type of things. And that was just a time in my life that I've never forgotten. And it was a time that you really liked being alive as a kid, and it kind of got your juices flowing on your imagination and so forth. And I think over time, as we all got into our careers and everything else, you kind of forget about those. But then later on, you start to reminisce a little bit. So that got me into thinking about, why don't I try to write a little bit? And it wasn't a Gothic type writing at the beginning. It was more of a thriller type writing. But I've kind of, I like both, but this is the novel we're talking about now is a thriller novel / Gothic suspense / Gothic romance. So I've kind of delved into a different area here, but it's been a lot of fun. I have to admit that.
Yeah. And I do have your first two books, which are, they lean a little bit more onto the thriller side, which are both excellent books too. And one of the things that you do is you really have this emotional impact to your writing. Can you talk about how you construct these very emotional and character-driven stories?
Well, I think we're all emotional beings, some more than others. And it depends on what side of the emotions you're on. If you're on the side of love and liking to see people excel and get their issues taken care of, that's what I like. I'm not so much in the side of, I don't know if it's an emotion, but the death and destruction side, I don't really care for. But it just, I think everybody has their emotions. They like to show them somehow. And I think through writing is a good way to do that. I know when I've read books and seen movies and they do have an emotional ting to them, which most of them do. It'll put a tear in my eye. So I think it's good for the human spirit to experience that.
Now, in The Salvation of Henry Maxwell, you equate it to being akin to what happens when Scrooge meets Edgar Allan Poe. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, Ebenezer Scrooge and channels Edgar Allan Poe. Henry Maxwell is a similar character, and they're both these guys are curmudgeons. They're caustic individuals. They are short-tempered, and I got to think, well, now Maxwell is going through a serious, extreme grief period in his life, and it's been going on for 40 some odd years, and he's trying to see where, that's taken him a certain area. Whereas Scrooge didn't start that way. He was just a nasty man to begin with. But both of them, through their time in their lives, start to see kind of a paranormal situation. Now, Scrooge gets to see a bunch of ghosts that kind of get to his inner soul. And Maxwell starts to hallucinate and see images of his wife in his garden. So they're both seeing ghosts, and they're both starting to have impacts on these individuals. Scrooge suddenly gains some empathy for like Tiny Tim, and he starts to change. He has a character arc that's changing him from nasty and mean to loving and caring. And that's the same thing happening with Maxwell in his book, in The Salvation of Henry Maxwell. He goes through a character arc of grief to a transformational into a change of understanding why he's that way and why people are important to him now. So that's the connection I saw between the two characters.
I love that. And you do craft really vibrant character arcs. Could you talk a little bit more about the setting and the plot? Because there's more going on with Henry Maxwell, right? There's other people and there's this investigation. Can you set the stage for us a bit?
Well, yeah, Henry right now in the book is 85 years old. He was a former mega horror actor in the 60s, like Vincent Price, if you folks remember him or others from that era. And because his wife died under circumstances of a drug overdose, which he had to believe for those 40 plus years, he was in such grief, he didn't really want to question that. But later on in life, he starts to feel a difference coming, and he starts to hallucinate, and he's almost on the edge of suicide. But the hallucinations keep him from doing that. And at the same time, he's visited by a young woman attorney who has been sent to his to live with him for a while to see how he acts and see if they can figure out why he's doing what he does. Now, she is sent as a conservator by the state of California. So she befriends a professor of film and media studies at the University of UCLA, I should say. And at the same time that they're trying to figure out what's wrong with why Henry's the way he is, he's a bunch of different things from his past start to appear. And it sets a stage for some serial killings that happen that are based on some of his old movies. The scenes from his old movies are happening now in the present in exactly the same locations that they happened in the movies. So that's kind of a strange affair. And so he has to work through that after being accused of being the murders murderer himself. And all the while, he's still trying to figure out why his wife died under these circumstances about 40 years ago. And he figures out she was murdered. So that keeps him going after he gets through the serial kill situation, which was a traumatic affair for him. And he works himself out to see his whole point of life now is to end up with his wife in eternity in a Gothic type of setting. So if you remember some of those movies where you had the casket and the grizzly, but that's what you're thinking is going to happen, but that's not what happens. But anyway, that's kind of a gist of the story. There's a lot of little subplots going on, but it all comes together in the end in a very wonderful ending that I think readers will enjoy.
And you're diving into the truth, discovering the truth. And you also have themes of fear. Irrational fears, right? To, in many ways, the fear that is holding Henry Maxwell back. And I know that your book isn't necessarily horror, but you do talk about fear a lot. Do you want to address fears and why that's part of the theme in your writing?
Well, I think the fear is kind of generic. It's not like the old fear of those 60 movies, but it's just given the reader a touch of what those had in them. But I didn't want the novel to rotate around fear, which would put it more into the horror category. I wanted it to rotate around characters and their emotions. And I think I did bring in areas of where Jessica, the young attorney, is caught up into a fear situation. And it brings out some of her past that she's not happy with. So it just brings out characters' different situations that they had to deal with in the past. And I want the reader also to think at some point, maybe Henry really is a fearful man. Maybe is he's still got his scary attributes from the 60s and he has never let those go. So that's kind of a little, kind of a subplot I'm trying to push through the novel. But as readers get through it, they find out that this fear is all just, it doesn't really exist nowadays. Maybe it existed in the movies way back in the 60s, but it does not really exist when you see how it all plays out in the end.
Yeah, and many times our fears are imaginary, and yet they're holding us back. I applaud you, though, Lee, because you did not let your fear hold you back. You decided to become a writer. You went out there and did it, whereas a lot of people will think to themselves, oh, yeah, I would love to write, but I can't do that. I would never be successful. I could never devote that time. It's their own fears that hold them back from writing or from exploring what they love. So I'm curious, any advice or thoughts on being a writer? Because you right there, Lee, have overcome a fear that a lot of people can't get past.
I think you got to push yourself. There's 2 or 3 things that I try to remember when I started doing this and what it takes to try to write, because, like you mentioned earlier, going from an engineer to a writer is not exactly something that happens every day, I wouldn't imagine. But you've got to accept criticism, number one. If you don't accept criticism, you're never going to learn to hone your craft in a better direction. And you've got to have the desire. The desire, I think, that's probably number one over the criticism. If you don't have a desire to do something, you're not going to be able to accomplish much. And I think the same thing goes with engineering. It takes a lot of desire to want to do that kind of work, which can be satisfying. And same thing with writing. Perseverance, got to keep at it through all the good, good and bad, thick and thin. You got to keep going for it. And hopefully, you'll get above that hump. And then networking, which, it has to be part of the equation. You got to talk to people, other writers, people in the publishing industry, and hopefully you can learn some tricks of how to staying a steady course. So those four things are pretty important to me.
And you do have universal themes. I mean, themes in themselves are universal. I think that's really what's connecting your readers, regardless of what age or what era they happen to be from. Great stories are great stories, period. Do you have any advice or encouragement that you might want to share with aspiring writers as far as pursuing their own careers in writing?
You just got to try it. And again, like I mentioned, perseverance. You're not gonna be a success on day one. You have to keep at it, and you got to keep doing it, and you got to keep learning. And it takes time, obviously, but you got to find the time to do it. And most writers do find the time to do it. And there are times that you just don't feel like even looking at a computer screen. So there's got to be joy in while you're doing it. And if you don't have that, then you maybe should find another occupation or hobby or whatever at that whatever moment in life you are in. But it's you just have to have the perseverance to do it and try it. If it doesn't work, then move on to something else.
Let's talk about your research process, because when you talk about needing to love it, in your case, you really have to love digging back in time and doing the research. Can you talk about your meticulous research process?
Well, back in the old days, I think libraries were a great resource. Now, not so much. You can get everything on the internet, but you got to be aware of what you're getting when you try to research a certain topic. One thing I found in also internet related is when I'm looking at a certain setting, a scene, a certain area, a certain whatever it is, Google Earth is just a fantastic tool to use. I mean, you can zero in, for instance, in Sava Steps, one of the previous novels, I had a place in Turkey that I wanted to set the stage at, and so you can figure out where you want to be. You can zoom in on it, and you can get a feel for what the towns look like, and you can see what the streets look like, and that helps you in developing your plot through that area. So Google Earth is just a wonderful thing to be using. Also, like I said, libraries are kind of passé anymore, but you can still get some stuff there. But I also found out if you want to find a subject on something that you can't find anywhere else, again, get on the internet, go to Amazon Books, type in the subject you're talking about, and they'll come up with different books that they don't have to be novels. They can be technical things or whatever, and you can find something that you really, that's what I need to find out about. And you can buy these books for normally used. They don't have to be brand new, and you can get a good deal out of them and use it as your own research library. So that I do that quite a bit.
Yeah, it's really wonderful how you can have this immersive experience on Google Earth. And when you start going down those internet rabbit holes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever do that? Do you ever just kind of go down this rabbit hole and then you start discovering information that starts to influence the plot lines and it takes you off in different trajectories?
Absolutely. But I think you got to go down those holes because there's different tunnels down there. It'll take you different directions if you can find the right one. But if you try them all, you'll find one that really works. And the deeper you dig, the better off you're going to be. Some people think the deeper you dig, you're just lost. It's done. It's finished. I disagree. I think you've got to be down there. You got to get a feeling for what is that. Hey, I'm going nowhere, but there's a tunnel here to the left I haven't tried. Maybe that'll get me somewhere. And usually find a way out. You find something that adds to your plot and gets you to where you want to be. So I think it's a valuable thing take the wrong fork in the road, basically.
Now, do you find inspiration in the two areas of the country that you live? I think they're kind of close to each other, Colorado, Nevada. I know you spend time in both places.
Well, yeah, go ahead. I spend most of my time in Colorado, but we do spend some time in Nevada, and which is surprising. I really haven't written anything about Colorado yet, which I should. But on the first novel, Irrational Fears, I did utilize areas near in Nevada and southern Utah, which I was familiar with. So you know, I always thought you had to be somewhere before you write about it, but that's not true. You don't need to. There's enough information that you can write about anywhere in the world without having to have visited it. But that doesn't mean it's not a bad idea to go there and check it out. So take a vacation.
Right. And, if you're a writer and that's your profession, then there's a good chance that vacation might even be a tax write-off for you.
Yep.
And then you get to explore this amazing area. I don't know about you, Lee. There's something about the desert. Mm-hmm. I'm not a fan of the desert. I like to visit it, but I would never want to live there. I've got this love-hate relationship with it. But there seems to be something almost magical when I drive through the desert, when I'm in places like Nevada and Arizona. It almost feels like there's just this energy or something in the air that can be invigorating and inspiring. I don't know if you ever have feelings like that in your travels.
Oh, all the time. And I agree with you. I growing up in Colorado was pretty much all the mountains, but in Western Colorado where I live, it's high desert. So we're right on the border pretty much of Utah. So we're into that red rock country, which is just fascinating. But there's just something about the wide open spaces out here that you don't get anywhere else. And it really does. It helps you think and helps you imagine and dream. So yeah, I love the desert.
Yeah. Now you've been involved with international thriller writers, and you've also contributed to the Big Thrill magazine and helped them out with panels in their conference. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've done that in the past. I haven't been on a panel in a while, but I did work a couple of years. A friend of mine got me involved, who was an author there, helping out with doing editing for some of the novels that would be presented by members of the International Thriller Writers. And so I would, go through them and read them and then do a question and answer with them, kind of like you're doing to me right now. But yeah, I did that for a couple of years, and then I was on a couple of panels over the years that, which is good because you get to meet other people in the profession, and you can, garner relationships from that. So that's part of the networking thing that I talked about earlier. And it's very valuable to be involved in that type of thing, and maybe going to conferences or at least getting into a writer's group or something. But you can't do this alone. Well, you can do it alone, but it's a higher hill to climb if you try to do it alone.
Yeah, you know what, Lee? That is a theme that comes up a lot on the show when talking with authors. A lot of them have that feeling. And I think that it's just perception. We have this perception, or many of us still do, that the role of a writer is to go off in that cabin in the woods, away from everybody, and they write and they create this marvelous book and they bestow it to the world, when the reality of that is that process does involve other authors and, to your point, editors, and finding community and networking and getting yourself out there in so many ways.
I agree. Totally.
Yeah. All right. Can you give us a taste of what's next? Are we going to find out more about Henry Maxwell and other books, or are you going back to writing in any of the other characters from your other books?
I don't think Henry's going to be in anything else because, as you'll see in the Salvation of Henry Maxwell, he finds salvation not from a religious standpoint, but from a Gothic standpoint. So no, he won't be coming back. I I kind of like this kind of a genre, though. I mean, I like the international stuff, but I kind of enjoy this Gothic area or something similar to that. And I'm working now on a novel that entails a big time stage magician, like maybe David Copperfield, one of those guys who goes through a tremendous amount of bad luck. And I'm trying to bring into that, and it's still a work in progress, of the idea of magic. What is magic? Is it the stage magic? We don't know. That's all trying to fool people. But is it really stage magic, or is it parapsychology involved in there somehow, with bending spoons and that kind of stuff? Or is there more of a religious aspect? In other words, if you believe in a supernatural being, well, isn't that kind of believing in magic? So I'm trying to tie those things together, and that's what I'm working on now. And it's I'm doing a lot of research and I'm learning a lot, but I think it's slowly coming together. So we'll see how that works out.
How very provocative. And that's the thing. That's what a good writer does. They find some kind of provocative angle or spin on things. And of course, magic, magicians. Oh my goodness. I am so here for it, Lee. This is amazing. And I just got to say, I love how when you're talking and you're talking about Gothic, we can hear the clock chiming in the background there. That was perfect.
That was my clock. Yeah.
I know that wasn't planned, but that's a nice ambiance. I like that.
Didn't even think about that.
Oh, love it. Love it. Okay, Lee, let people know where they can go to find out more about you, your books. Give us your website. Give us your details.
Website is www. You don't need that, but it's just leelindauer.com. That's LeeLindauer.com. And you can find a lot of information there, mainly on all the books and on the Salvation of Henry Maxwell, which is the latest. And I'm also on Facebook a little bit, so you can find me there. And you will find information on the book through the publisher, Wild Rose Press. So that's a couple ways to find me. And if you do get on my website, you can sign up for the newsletter, which will keep you abreast of all the future things.
Lee Lindauer, author of The Salvation of Henry Maxwell, as well as The Saba Steps and Irrational Fears. And sounds like something really interesting coming up that has to do with magic. I love it, Lee. Thank you for being with us on the show today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you, everybody, for joining us as well. You can find out more about us on the website. That is booksthatmakeyou.com. You can also follow on Facebook and Instagram. And of course, on YouTube. Make sure you ring the bell, subscribe. Never miss a great interview with authors just like Lee Lindauer. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.